Recording, start the webinar. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Fire Safety Essentials. This is a Fire Safety Essential presentation aimed at the community members of Panmure and the surrounds. Myself, Raj Samrai, and my co-host, Julie Owens, will be taking you through this presentation. There is no need to take notes. All the information that we're going to allude to will be available by way of downloads at the end of the presentation. As is traditional, we would like to make an acknowledgement of country, and we would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are hosting this meeting this evening, and also pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and of course, any other Aboriginal people that are joining us today. At this point, I'd like to hand over to Julie just to give us an insight into the technology that we're using this evening. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Raj. Yes, we are using technology, a new way that CFA has developed to deliver these presentations since COVID has stopped on face-to-face presentations. We're actually on a webinar, and that means that you cannot turn on your video or audio. You'll be able to interact with us by answering polls when I put them up on the screen and by using the chat function. I have to mention that this is being recorded, so this session is being recorded, but it is a recording for our benefit. We cannot see or hear you, the audience. The recording will be of Raj and myself in the presentation, and that is for our benefit in our learnings. There will be some interaction during we will be showing a short video and some animations, and when these are being shown, Raj will warn you that they could be distressing, and you just look away during those times. We might get started with our chat function. So with the chat function, you hover your mouse over the little chat icon. Mine's at the bottom of the screen, yours might be at the top, and press the button, and then you can type. Raj and I will be monitoring that chat function throughout the presentation. And the other way we're interacting is through polls. So when we launch a poll, you will be asked to click on one of the answers to our questions. They will be anonymous. Your answers will be anonymous. It will be optional. You scroll through the responses, and then when you have finished doing that, you press the submit button, and that will submit your answers. And then we will share the answers and discuss those, and then you can close off the polls. So there are just a couple of ways that we can interact with you. So don't forget that the chat function is available right out throughout the presentation. So if you want to make a comment or ask a question, use that chat function. We might, Raj, have a practice of a poll while we're talking about it.
Yeah, I think while you queue the poll up, I might just reiterate a couple of points that you've made there. Yes, the CFA are venturing into this new space of online interaction. And really the strength of online interaction is the engagement. If you're able to chat to us, respond in the polls, that's fantastic, because that's one way of us understanding your needs and obviously informing the program as well. It helps us modify and make amendments for any future presentations, but also it allows us to share your information with other people that are also on the webinar. So it's a win-win all round, and we all learn. So thank you for that participation. And yes, Julie, it'd be great to launch that first poll.
Okay, we're going to launch the first poll. And this is a little bit about you, the audience. This is asking you how long you've lived in the area. So you've got choices there from 1 year to 10 plus. So if you just click on one of those as to how long you've lived in the area. Have you been to a CFA meeting before? Yes, no, or you can't remember. And how did you learn about this session? recommended by a friend, social media, newspaper advertisement, community notice board, or other. So you can just click one of those and then rate your knowledge around fire. So from very low to very high. So if you can click on each of those, and I'll give you a few minutes to go through those again, scroll down. And when you have done that, don't forget to click the submit button. So that will submit your answers. So thank you for answering those. And obviously there's no right or wrong answer. And this is information for us so that we can tailor the presentation to your needs. So I'll end the poll there and I will share the results. So we can't tell who's clicked what, we can just see the answers, and they're quite a variety of answers there, Raj.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a cross section of people that live in the Panmure area, from some new arrivals to some very long established folks as well. That's really good to see. Majority of you have not been to CFA meeting before. It's a 60-40 split or thereabouts. So, okay, that's not too bad. And then when we talk about, well, where did you find out about this session? Yes, again, there's a variety of options there, and the majority is actually social media. Social media features quite strongly as one of the key places that people find out about information like this. And secondly, the community notice board. I know that the Panmure Hotel features very strongly as a focal point within the community, and I've seen the notice board there, and actually I do know the landlady quite there as well. So that's an interesting source of information, particularly within our close-knit communities. Rating in knowledge around fire. Okay, again, a very wide cross-section from very low, to high. No one here is actually very high in their understanding of fire safety. So as Julie said, that gives us some idea of how to pitch our presentation this evening. So thank you for that. I'm now going to close out of that, as perhaps you could do as well, if it's still there. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to the next part of our presentation, which really looks at what is it that we're all doing here? Why have you given up your Friday evening to spend with Julie and myself talking about fire safety essentials? What are the fire safety essentials presentation? What is it all about? Well, it's about understanding local fire risk. It's about tailoring the presentation to the environment of Panmure, understanding what it is about Panmure and understand the risks that exist there. What to expect from a fire? I mean, what's fire made of? What are the components of fire? How do we know if there is a fire in the area? What's the go-to? How do we know there's a fire happening? What's our communication channel? And of course, we'll be spending a bit of time looking at planning and decision making. This is absolutely pivotal to a good outcome when it comes to fire safety. Surviving if the plan fails or you get caught out, and this can happen, and it does happen. History tells us often the best laid plans can fail. The secret to a plan failing is to have a second option ready and good to go. Forward planning is essential when it comes to fire safety. Let's move on now to the next element here, which is looking at the local fire risks and understanding those fire risks. I'd like to say a few words on this particular slide, and that's primarily to say that Panmure is a very interesting place. There's a lot of great history relating to Panmure. First of all, it's located in the municipality of Moyne. A lot of us know that already. It's also located where the Warrnambool Road, that's Prince's Highway, used to be called the Warrnambool Road in the old days, apparently. It forded with Mount Emu Creek. And a lot of us that will travel through Panmure may be oblivious to this. A long waterway flowing from nearby Beaufort to the Hopkins River. It was named after Lord Panmure. He was actually English Secretary for War in 1855. And Panmure was described as a Valier's Victorian Gazetteer in 1865 as a roadside village situated in thickly timbered country with rich black soil. So Panmure has obviously changed over time. The fertility of the soil remains the same, Perhaps a lot of the vegetation has also changed. It's no longer thickly forested with timber, but areas of forest do exist, and we are all aware of that. Further on, a school was opened in 1870. Its teacher, and this is a very interesting fact, and I've included it deliberately in this presentation because I found this quite interesting. A school opened in 1870. Its teacher in 1873 was Thomas Lowe, whose son Charles Lowe, who died in 1969, was a pupil. Thomas became blind and took up storekeeping in 1880, and his son became a temporary monitor. He later was knighted. So this is interesting. He was later knighted as Victoria's Chief Justice and Chancellor of the University of Melbourne. So a local person who went on to achieve great things. Other activities within the Panmure district include grazing and dairying, which are actually the main occupations. And this is evident as you drive along the highway there. The point that I'm trying to make here is the tremendous amount of community spirit and community cohesion that exists in our townships like Panmure and nearby Cobden and Timboon. We all share that same sense of community, looking out for each other, being there for each other, and understanding what our needs are. And this is one of the driving forces or considerations of the Country Fire Authority, the CFA. We understand the cohesion that exists, and we thrive on being able to use and understand your loyalty and commitment to each other, looking after each other in the event of a fire incident. Let's take that one step further and we start talking about the landscape. What's the lay of the land around us? What is it about Victoria that makes it one of the most bushfire parts of the world? It's naturally the landscape, a landscape that's evolved over time. We know, for instance, that our Aboriginal people have used fire for many thousands of years to care for country. And so what's the significance here? Well, let's take that one step back by saying, well, there's a varied landscape across the continent. We have a lot of grassland, bushland, and of course, mountainous forested area, as well as extensive farmland. And Panmure is no different here. This fire that's been present in the Australian continent for millions of years has been significant in shaping the landscape that we see today. As I mentioned, caring for country from our Aboriginal people. The fires were a tool that they used to encourage the growth and extent of grasslands. They used it to enhance hunting and of course reduce levels of fuel. And we're talking about fuel load as we go. Fire kept the vegetation from becoming dense and difficult to walk through. Another interesting fact in this regard is records of bushfire activity only really started in earnest in about 1851. And this was at the time of the early stages of European settlement. So this is the context that we're dealing with, not only in Panmure, but in other smaller locations around the state of Victoria. Let's move on and take this to the next level. I'm now showing you a map on your screen, and this map shows you the different weather districts that exist across our state. The main take-home message here is that each fire district had its own level of fire risk. East Gippsland's fire risk will be very different of that of the Wimmera or the Southwest or Central. Let's put another consideration into play here, and this is what we call the seasonal outlook. What do I mean by seasonal outlook? Well, this describes the overall weather trend of what's happening in our weather district. Let's explore that a bit further. No, don't be bamboozled or confused by the graphs or the colors. This is all designed to give you an indication of what we call the La Nina effect. There's two maps of Australia that are appearing on your screen at the moment. A map on the left, which shows the temperature or the temperature changes throughout the periods of September through to November 2020. And the median rainfall or the average rainfall between the same period last year. What's happening at the moment is called the La Nina effect, and these conditions are expected to reduce the risk of prolonged fire activity across most of Victoria compared to last year. I hear you say that's fantastic news, and it is. There will be reduced risk of prolonged fire activity. But how so? Well, in order to answer that question, we need to spend a bit more time thinking about the element of La Nina. What is La Nina? La Nina clearly means increased rainfall. And, judging by the rain that we've had over the last couple of months, this is not a surprise to us. Panmure has not been immune to this rain. We've all had a huge amount of rain, a huge dumping of rain in a very short space of time. This is characteristic of the La Nina weather phenomena. Together with the excessive rainfall, as shown by the map on the right-hand side, we also have a temperature consideration as well. La Nina is typified by cooler daytime temperatures, generally south of the tropics, as shown by the map on the left-hand side, but also warmer overnight temperatures in the north, again, as shown by the map on the left-hand side. So the north is warmer during the nighttime, and the south is cooler. It's quite interesting because the last La Nina effect actually appeared in the winter of 2017-2018, and this was closely followed by its cousin or counterpart, El Nino, which followed in 2018-2019. So you can see there's a bit of a dance going on between La Nina, where we are now, and El Nino, that will happen subsequently. Let's take that down to what this means to Panmure. What does this seasonal outlook look like in local terms? What is it about Panmure that makes this seasonal outlook so important? Well, Panmure is located in a part of Victoria that has experienced slightly above average rainfall and above average soil moisture. La Nina has been responsible for this, naturally. And I can hear you all, getting very excited. Oh, great, lots of rain. Yes, it is. It's fantastic news. Great for our farming communities. Great for the communities around the Panmure district for sure. There's actually enough moisture to make the grass grow well, and that's fantastic news. But what we must take into consideration is the drying or curing effect of this rapidly growing fuel. With the high daytime temperatures that we've had over the last couple of months, the occasional almost 40-degree day, this has caused a rapid drying of that fuel, a rapid curing of that fuel. So what does that mean? That means there's an increased potential for fast-moving grass fires. That is what is going to be the order of the day. As is the case every season, there is a need to be prepared for a fire that could happen as a consequence of La Nina, the increased rainfall, the rapid drying, and the consequent high fuel load that is available for ignition or lighting. Let's go on to talk about the local vegetation. What is it about the local vegetation in Panmure that makes it even more of an important consideration? At this point, I'd just like to open up the chat function. We all know how it works now. Pop something into the chat to let me know about what is, as you look out the window, it's not quite gone dark yet, but look out the window. What is your local landscape looking like? What's it made up of? Pop your responses into the chat function. How's it looking there, Julie?
Yes, people have put in grasslands, bush in the distance. They can see a bit of bush and grasslands, and they say they're confirming what you said about the growth, the high fuel load.
Oh, absolutely. It's probably not too dissimilar to the slide that we're showing, is it really?
Exactly.
Very extensive grassland, a bit of bush. Yeah. And I mean, Panmure itself is a lovely part of the world. I'm always in awe of its natural beauty as I drive through. Okay. Thank you for your comments. And yes, you're all right. 100% for sure. So the predominant fuel around Panmure is grass, and there's no doubt about that, with areas of bush and bush along roadsides. So this is an area at risk from fast-moving grass fires, with likely ember attack from nearby bush to the north, northwest, and the west. What does this mean for Panmure? Well, let's understand a bit more about what a fast-moving grass fire actually looks like. What is the driving force behind a fast-moving grass fire? If we cast our mind back to some really basic fire safety essentials, for a fire to occur, there need to be three components that need to be present. One is the fuel. And when we talk about fuel, we're talking grass in this instant, copious amounts of it, as we talked about. There has to be an ignition or a heat source, and of course, oxygen. When those three components come together, we have the recipe for a fire to occur. In order for a grass fire to progress, it needs to be pushed along. The driving force for our grass fires is wind. The wind is the driving force that will determine the direction of a fire. We often call the fire header as the fire front. The very front of the fire is the fire front. Fire fronts are driven by a wind. Should there be a change of direction of the wind, so too the fire front. So a change of wind will cause a change of direction of that fire. Let's be a bit more mindful now about the topography, the lay of the land, the hills, the inclinations, the dips, the bumps around Panmure. And there's a fair few. Even going into the locality, you go down a dip. I've cycled along that road, and it's quite a climb when you come out at the other end, when you cross the railway line. It is a rather, shall we say, bumpy area with lots of inclines. Let's not become complacent about this, because one would think that, oh, there's a couple of hills between me and the advancing fire. I should be fine. I've got more time than anyone else. If it was flat, it'd be hit a lot faster. Well, in actual fact, fires travel much faster uphill than they do downhill. Fires will double in speed for every 10-degree increase in inclination of that hill. So let's not think that just because there's a couple of hills between me and the fire that's approaching, you're going to buy time. In fact, the fire will get to you a lot faster than you might think. So that's the local vegetation. Let's tailor this now to the local risks in the Panmure area. And I might get Julie to introduce our next poll here.
Thank you, Raj. I'll launch this poll, which is going to ask you what you think the local risks in your area. So we're talking about fire risks. It's a multiple choice. There are a number of answers there. There are a number of things that you can tick. Winding roads, trees hanging over access roads and escape routes, high tourist area in summer, speed of grass fires, up to 20 kilometres an hour, as Raj has explained, numerous grass fires sparked by embers, and high fuel load. So if you could tick one or all of those that you think might be relevant to the Panmure area, and thank you for your results, for your, I will just end the polling then and share the results. And as we can see, Raj, most people have ticked at least one of those. Everyone's ticked one of them, sorry. Some people obviously have ticked, some more people have ticked one more often. It's interesting that they've highlighted the high fuel load and the speed of grass fires, as you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and they're very important factors, and there's no doubt about that. I think whenever we talk about local risks in a particular area, all areas are different. We found that, we're finding this right now. There's not much consideration to high tourists in summer in the Panmure area. And if we compare that to somewhere like the Great Ocean Road, like Apollo Bay or Laver's Hill, they are high tourist areas, and consequently, again, another big risk. So not all areas have the same level or amount of risk, and it can be a variety. But overall, the majority of our locations will have a concern about high fuel load, They'll have a concern about the potential for grass fires to be sparked by embers. They're concerned about the speed of fires as well. And we know that relation between fires traveling much faster uphill than downhill, and the wind being the driving force. We also know about trees and limbs that are hanging over trees for the potential for canopy fires when they get ember attacked. We talk about windy and narrow roads, which will limit access and exit, access to emergency vehicles and exit of people trying to get out. These roads can often be an impediment to our emergency service. So one of the main considerations is not to be on the road and to have left early. I'm not going to labor my point too much at the moment, other than to say, do we need to be in an area that has such high risk in the event of a bad fire day? Do we want to subject ourselves to this level of stress and frustration? I think not, but we'll explore that as we go. I'm going to close my poll this end, and I suggest you do the same. And let's move on to the next component of this presentation, which is looking at the services of your local brigade in Panmure. Okay. Now, having spoken to Craig, your CFA captain, and a couple of other members of the brigade, they do a stellar job, 24/7, working hard, with the sole aim of looking after the community. Let me just pose a very rhetorical question at you. The Panmure Brigade is made up of, have at their disposal, one tanker and one quick fill. This is to service a population of 424 people located not locally, but quite spread out across 181 properties and dwellings. Now, tell me, in the event of a bad fire day, how comfortable would you be, or how confident would you be to expect Craig and the crew turning up in their tanker with the quick fill on your property on a bad fire day, at your farm, at your business, at your home, at your school even? How realistic is it to expect that resource at your dwelling? Particularly if you bear in mind that the resource of the Panmure Brigade will also be pulled in other directions, assisting other brigades, assisting other fires. And this is why we would strongly suggest that you take ownership of the fire situation, learn to understand about fire, prepare a plan that looks after yourself, your family, and your community. Activate the plan and be out of harm's way before the fire actually arrives. You cannot expect the CFA brigade to be servicing you and solely you on a bad fire day. It's just not possible. Take ownership and be in control. What to expect from a fire? This is a very important component of our presentation this evening. It's designed to give you a real taste of the very harsh nature of fire, the indiscriminate force with which it can cause complete havoc, both in your community and in your life. It's a force not to be underestimated. And here at the CFA, both Julie and I, who are volunteer firefighters in our local brigades of Woodford and Wangoon, respectively, we understand the danger that is fire, and we would like everyone else to understand the danger that is fire. I'm going to show you a presentation. It's an animation. It's quite a shocking animation, and some of you may find it quite dramatic and probably emotionally impactful. So please look away for a couple of minutes and then join us at the end of the animation for us to have a discussion about it. This particular animation is entitled Ember Attack, and it gives you a depiction of what to expect when you are subject to an ember attack.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs and pieces of bark. They help the bushfire spread by starting spot fires ahead of the main fire front. Short-distance ember attacks happen when leaves and small pieces of bark are blown from burning trees. The intense shower of sparks that forms fills the air with hot, burning embers, which will land on nearby vegetation and properties. The hot embers can easily land and get into your clothes and burn your skin, eyes and airways. Small fires will start all around you and quickly become uncontrollable. The resulting chaos creates confusion as the fire seems to come from many directions, meaning it will be difficult to make good decisions about your safety. The experience will be physically exhausting and emotionally traumatic. Long-distance ember attack is caused by large bushfires that generate intense heat. As the hot air rises, it forms a column of smoke that sucks in air like a vacuum, increasing the intensity of the fire. The updraft in the column lifts embers, like large pieces of burning ribbon bark, hundreds of metres into the air, where strong winds can carry them many kilometres beyond the fire front. On Black Saturday, embers travelled more than 30 kilometres ahead of the main fire. When these embers land, they often start fires where leaves naturally accumulate, like in gutters, doorways and garden beds. So while you might think you're safe when a bushfire is far away, embers can fall from the sky and land around your home long before you even know there's a fire. But remember, your home isn't the only thing under threat during an ember attack. By the time you realise the danger, it might be too late as escape routes become jammed. Embers can also start fires on roads and block them completely, making late evacuation dangerous or impossible. That's why leaving early, before a fire starts, is always your safest option.
Now that's quite a graphic and dramatic depiction of one element of fire, embers and ember attack. We know that Victoria has had a lot of fires. Last summer we saw huge fires in multiple parts of the state. As we try and get underneath the skin of fire, it's important for us to remember that ember attack is by far the biggest cause of property loss during a fire. It leaves a scar on the landscape. The images of an advancing, fast-moving grass fire can be seen on the slides here, the devastation that these grass fires can actually cause. One of the big considerations is property preparation, preparing your property to limit the risk of ember attack. As a PAVS presenter, a property advice visit service presenter, which is a community door knocking service that the CFA employ, we talk to community members, community householders about the preparation that they can do to limit the risk of ember attack. Simple things like keeping your guttering and your spouting clear of any debris that could be potential fuel for fire. Limiting the amount of fuel or wood stock around your property. Turning gas cylinders away, valves away from your property so they explode outwards in the event of heat impact. These are just some of the considerations that the Property Advice Visit Service will provide. And again, the download information will be available at the end of this presentation. Ember attack is not the only way that your home can be impacted. Another way is what we call direct flame impact. What do I mean by direct flame impact? We're talking about a continuity of fuel between you and the advancing fire front. It may well be a fast-moving grass fire that is allowed to run directly to your home. The only way to mitigate this risk, to limit and reduce the risk of this direct flame impact, is to cause some kind of divide, break the continuity of fuel. And we often suggest having a driveway, an area of clear ground or short green grass around your home. This will slow the fire, it will stop the fire, it will reduce the risk of direct flame impact on your home. We often say that if there is fuel to your doorstep, you will have fire to your doorstep. So that's an important consideration. What I'm going to do now is prepare you for the next animation. This animation is entitled Radiant Heat. Again, it's very graphic in nature and it's designed to give you that shock factor, to really bring you home. This is the danger that is fire. We have Ember Attack and we have Radiant Heat. These are two significant players when it comes to the nature of fire and being able to outsmart fire. So while I stop this share and locate the video for you, animation, I might just get Julie to say a few words about Radiant Heat.
Thank you, Raj. If embers are the greatest, or one of the greatest reasons of property loss during a fire, then radiant heat is one of the greatest killers of people, the loss of life during a fire. You must remember too that Ember Attack can happen in grass fires as well as bushfires. People seem to think that if you have trees, they're the things that will cause those embers to fly through the air. But embers can be flown through the air from grass, can result from a grass fire as well. And it's the same with radiant heat. A grass fire, a fast-moving grass fire, has lots of fuel, can cause a great amount of heat. And people die during a fire from radiant heat.
Thank you, Julie. Radiant heat.
Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. Every summer, bushfires threaten properties and lives. But did you know it's not the flames that kill most bushfire victims? No, it's the radiant heat. Most victims die from the effects of radiant heat long before they're reached by the flames. Radiant heat is what you feel when you sit next to a campfire. If a campfire heats up to 2 kilowatts per square metre, you'll feel that it's too hot and will want to move back from the fire. If you don't, this amount of radiant heat is enough to cause burns and blisters in as little as 40 seconds. At 12 kilowatts, it can cause some materials like dry timber to ignite. A bushfire can reach 100 kilowatts, and the effects can be truly catastrophic. For humans, radiant heat can cause burns from 100 meters away and cause a dangerous increase in body temperature. Radiant heat can cause the rapid onset of heat stroke. Heat stroke damages your brain, meaning you won't be able to concentrate to make good decisions as the fire arrives. Other impacts include severe damage of internal organs and death. There are some things you can do if you're caught in a fire. Cover your skin with long-sleeved, natural fibre clothing, like wool. It's also useful to know that radiant heat only travels in straight lines and can't bend around corners. So, sheltering behind or inside solid structures may help protect you. But be aware, radiant heat will travel straight through glass. The best defense against radiant heat is a simple one. If you're not anywhere near a bushfire, its radiant heat can't hurt you. Leaving early is always your safest option.
That particular animation, I think, speaks for itself. It speaks volumes. And again, that one liner at the end, that leaving early is always going to be your safest option. And both Julie and I, we can't reinforce that to you enough. It's important that you heed the warning signs and leave early. Do you really want to subject yourself to that degree of harm from the intensity of radiant heat, or that degree of personal loss in the event of an ember attack to your property? It's just not worth it. We can always come back if the fire direction changes and your property is not in the line of fire. If the fire doesn't come your way, you can come back. Radiant heat is the biggest killer in a fire. It's invisible. Yes, it travels in straight lines, but it arrives way before the flames even get to your property. That ginormous amount of radiant heat that's created by a bushfire, a grass fire, as Julie said earlier, is tremendous in its intensity and the amount of damage that it can cause to your skin, to your body. And we are not designed to withstand that degree of punishment. What I'd like to do now on the next slide is show you some quotations. These were made by persons that were caught in a fire situation. And these were the words that they said to describe what they were going through and how they envisaged the experience of being caught in a fire. In this regard, I think the words speak volumes. And when we put this all into the context of emotional intelligence and being able to understand what we're dealing with, I think it's quite important to note that we need to be out of harm's way. We don't need to be experiencing this kind of frustration, this kind of hell, as Tom said from Cobden. We don't want this hailstorm of embers. It's a crazy space. The world of fire is dangerous, it's unpredictable, and it's lethal. It's life-threatening. If you just allow me for 1 second to stop this share and locate another bit of information for you. And this is actually very powerful in its own way. It explains the thoughts and the words of people that were caught in a fire situation. And these are their explanations. This is their real life. These are real life characters. These are not actors. This is their account of what they felt in a fire situation.
10 years ago, when all the dams were full and the tanks were full and there was plenty of water, I probably would have stayed and I would have died.
Nothing went the way we might have anticipated.
Whatever preparations you put into place, you only need something small to go wrong.
You know, in future, I don't think we'd want to put the kids through that sort of trauma, I guess. Yeah, wouldn't put the kids through that again.
If it was my choice, I wouldn't stay again. If we had another day like that, if I had the opportunity to get out, I would go before the fire even got here.
You know, those closing words there, before the fire even got here, that's the take-home message for all of our presentation this evening. Before the fire even got here. And those were people who felt they had a degree of competence when it came to staying and fighting the fire. They survived, but they only survived by the skin of their teeth. There was the element of trauma that was mentioned there. Trauma is one of these processes, one of these impacts on your life that will take a long time to go. Dealing with people that suffer from trauma, it's something that can re-erupt at any time in the future. Do you want that for your family, for your children? I guess not. So leave before the fire even arrives. I'm going to summarize this part of the presentation up until now. What does this all mean for you? Well, yes, we've identified that fire is a very stressful and traumatic situation to be in. It's made even more stressful and traumatic when you don't know what you're dealing with, when you don't have a plan and you're not prepared. It is our suggestion that you do have a plan and be prepared. Understand there are exit roads and access roads will be blocked. Some of the narrow roads around the Panmure district will become blocked. There is the risk of ember attack. We've already spoken about ember and how quickly that can spread through canopy fires. And of course, radiant heat, another really key player when it comes to death and fatalities in the event of a fire event. Julie, let's launch a poll. I think this might be a good time to assess what people think are some of the factors that affect their ability to make good decisions. Yeah?
Yes, all right. So this poll is actually asking you what you think would be the impact on your ability to make good decisions. And this is again a multiple choice. So stress, rapidly changing situations, things not going to plan, not having time, or communication breakdown. So when you're answering these, think of what you've just heard and seen, and think what of those things would actually impact your ability to make those rational decisions. Okay, thank you for your results. I can see that, thank you for your answers. People have, well, all of those have been ticked, Raj. Nobody's left any of them out.
Yeah. And I guess rightly so as well, Julie, because we know with our own experiences that the human being, us as humans, we're not designed to handle stress. Stress is one of these things that some can do better than others, but on the whole, we find it difficult to handle a stressful situation. We don't have that coping strategy. This coping strategy is further impacted if we don't know what we're dealing with, if we don't know what it is that fire is. If the situation is changing rapidly around us, this is going to make us even more stressful. When things aren't going to plan, when we lose control of a situation, the stress builds up. When we're running out of time, the stress builds up. And of course, communication breakdown, not knowing where your loved ones are at the time of a critical event. This is all extremely stressful. So let's remember that when we're in that fire situation, do we want to be in this situation? Or do we want to be in control? Because being in control means that you've got a fire plan. You're going to enact that fire plan and you're going to enact it early. The fire plan will take into consideration family members, friends, relatives, community members, vulnerable members of the community, pets, your horses, whatever it might be. If you have a plan, you can factor all of these considerations in, start the plan early, allow yourself plenty of time, and be out of harm's way with a good outcome. You're safe, you're alive. And that's all that matters when it comes to fire safety essentials. Keeping yourself alive, keeping your family and friends alive, and out of harm's way. So how's that all done? Firstly, how do we know if there's actually a fire in our locality? How do we know the time to activate our fire plan? So far, we've spoken about radiant heat and the decision-making process. Some of the key messages before we go into this section also include understanding what it's like to be in a fire. It's not a nice place. And then we've just spoken about the various factors that affect your ability to make those all-important good decisions. You need to have a plan. Okay. How do you know if there's a fire in your area? Let's open the chat again, Julie, and find out what our listeners have got to say about their means of communication.
So yes, we'll open the chat and just give us some idea of how you might know there's a fire in your area. And while you're doing that, while you're doing the chat, we might look at some indicators of there possibly being a fire in your area. Some ways of knowing what sort of days are ahead of you and what the fire rating is for that. So if we look at this, the fire danger ratings, everyone's seen these, TV, social media, on the sides of roads. And these are indicators or ratings that the CFA determine about midday of the day before each day during summer. And it doesn't, so what, before we go any further with that, Raj, I might also, it's good people are sending some things in. I like the one about using their senses in the chat of how they know it's fire.
Oh, yeah.
But
Very
I might
good.
launch this next poll that asks you the question of how do you know there is a fire? And this relates to the fire danger ratings. So what does the fire danger rating mean? Is it an indication of how likely a fire will start, or an indicator of how bad a fire would be if one were to start? And how many code red days have we had in the southwest in the last 5 years? And how many severe or extreme days have happened in the southwest in the last 5 years? So if you just have a guess, if you don't know, just have a guess. We can't tell who is picking which. Click on one of those, and then once you've done that, hit the submit button. So thank you for that. I'll end the polling and share the results. So most people did get the first question correct. Fire danger rating, the FDR, is an indicator of how bad a fire would be if one were to start. There has been no code red days, and the severe and extreme days, there has been 6 in the last 5 years. So I'll just explain a little bit more. I'll stop sharing those results and close that polling box. Just go into a little bit more detail on each of these fire danger ratings and what they mean. A fire can start on any day. On a low, moderate, high, very high, a fire can start. Fire is possible throughout the year. We all know that we've had fires during winter. But a fire during a low, moderate, high or very high is usually a predictable fire that is not easy, but can be controlled. Throw the brigades at it, put all your resources on it, and it will be controllable. Within by a certain time, it'll be controllable. But if we get a severe day means that it is a hot, windy, possibly windy, hot, dry, and possibly windy day. And if a fire were to start on that day, then it may become uncontrollable. An extreme day means that it's extremely hot, dry, and windy. And if a fire were to start and take hold, it will be uncontrollable, unpredictable, and fast moving. Spot fires will start more quickly and will come from every direction. And then a code red day, those are the days where the conditions are the worst possible for bush and grass fire. Homes are not designed or constructed, and people are not designed to withstand fires in these conditions. It's why the CFA say the safest place is to be away from high risk bushfire and grass fire areas during these conditions. So you use these ratings, these 5 fire danger ratings, as your trigger. When it's going to be a code red day and you're in a high risk area, leave. You either leave the night before or the morning of that day. Check your fire danger ratings each day and avoid areas with thick bush, long dry grass. Know your triggers and make the decision about what you're going to do. Hopefully that will be to leave, where you will go, and how you will get there, and when you will return, when you have seen what that fire danger rating is. You have to also know what to do if you can't leave, if something happens, and we will talk about that later in the presentation. So if you do, people know what these fire danger ratings means. How do they get the information about what the day is going to be like, whether there is a fire, where are people getting their information from to understand all of this and to know their triggers? So I might hand it back to you, Raj, to talk about sources of information.
Wonderful. Thanks, Julie, and thanks for that explanation with the fact fire danger rating. I just want to spend a couple of minutes, and this is quite a critical part of our presentation. We live in a very busy world, and it's not like the old days where we could just look at the newspaper or listen to the radio or chat to a friend and they would have all the answers of what's going on in the world. Today, we are driven by an information epidemic. I call it infobesity. We are bombarded left, right, and center with information from digital platforms. Platforms now that are synonymous with logos, the Facebook logo, the YouTube logo, the Twitter logo, the Instagram logo, and the list goes on. All of these, together with conversation with friends in the cafe, a neighbor over the back wall talking to you, or even maybe while you're out at the gym, someone having a conversation with you. And we call these informal means of communication. They're informal because, strictly speaking, they're not legitimate, they're not credible, they're not evidence-based, and they don't need to be given the amount of airtime that some of us may do. At the CFA, we would rather you seek more formal means of communication. And when I say formal means of communication, I mean these. These are more formal because they are credible, they are legitimate, they are real time, and they are dedicated emergency services. By far, one of the most important is the Vic Emergency app. If any of you listening in Panmure does not have the Vic Emergency app, we would strongly suggest that you download it to your smartphone as soon as possible. It could be your lifesaver in the event of a fire emergency. It provides that around fire activity in the area, allows you to plan your exit from a fire danger area or from a fire prone area. It will allow you to actually be able to track your journey and make navigation around those areas of fire activity. And while we're talking about some of the considerations here, there are other platforms. I'd also like to mention local news and the importance of local news when it comes to a fire event. As we already know, fires will often cause a breakdown in network communications. So a lot of our sort of telephone masts and towers will go down. We will not be able to communicate in the normal way. Your lifeline will be a battery operated radio. When you're in this caught in a fire situation, the communications have gone down, it'll be that dark space. It'll be disorientating, it'll be noisy, and it'll certainly be perhaps smoke filled with poor visibility. But your radio, your battery operated radio, will allow you to tune in to 774 ABC, who have a dedicated emergency line that will give you up-to-date information as to what the activity is in and around you. And this could be your line to the outside world and safety. Of course, other platforms exist, including the Vic Emergency Hotline and of course, Emergency Management Victoria as well. These are your credible, legitimate, real-time, formal means of communication. They are your go-to in the event of an emergency event. What I'd like to do now is probably explore the Vic Emergency app in a bit more detail. And Julie's going to run through the warning systems that exist on the Vic Emergency app.
So
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Raj. These warning systems have been developed by CFA to keep you informed in the case of an emergency. So an advice, they're not necessarily linear. You might not always receive an advice, watch and act, and then emergency. You could go straight to an emergency depending on the situation. And I'll explain that a little bit later after I've gone through these. But if you receive an advice, and it will come on your Vic Emergency app, It'll be on the radio, the TV. It will be on your phone if you have your phone tuned into that. You can get this information in a number of places. But an advice is that an incident is occurring and has occurred in the area. You have to access information, monitor your conditions, find out what's going on. But an advice is simply a notification that there is some activity in your area. Sometimes it might even let you know that there has been some activity, but it's no longer a danger, it is subsiding. So it's just what it says, it's advice. But if you receive a watch and act, that means that the emergency in your area is developing. So there's an emergency in your area and it is developing, and you need to take action to protect yourself and others. So you need to do more than monitor the situation, you need to know. That's where you go to your credible, your formal sources of information to get more information as to what that is. And an emergency, if you receive an emergency warning, that means that you are in imminent danger and you need to take action immediately. You will be impacted. And when we say take action immediately, it may simply be that you have to shelter in place, but you are in imminent danger. CFA also has a couple of other warnings. One is the evacuation. So an evacuation is, when you get that warning, is that it is recommended that you evacuate. There are procedures in place. Usually the police or the community will have those in place, and it is a good idea at that stage to enact your evacuation plan. And community information is usually in the form of a newsletter. It could be online or it could be on paper. And that contains updates for communities affected by an emergency. It could be a notification that an incident has occurred and there's no threat to the community. But it will tell you where you can get help, where you can get information, where resources are that you may need after an emergency. But in all of this, our main message is do not wait for a warning, because you might be ahead of the warnings. The warnings can only be given out from somewhere central, maybe not anywhere near you, and you may be ahead. And the next little animation might actually explain that a little bit better than I can. So if you have a look at this animation, you're sitting in your house, it's an extreme day or even a severe day. And you're sitting in your house with your curtains closed, you're watching Netflix, and there is a fire. A fire starts about less than 20 minutes away from you. You don't know about it. Nobody else does just yet. About 5 minutes in, somebody spots it and rings 000. So now is when 000 sends out the message to the brigades. Get on your trucks, go and check it out. And CFA in Melbourne at the Communications Centre also get that information. So it'll be 10 minutes before an advice message is sent out. The advice message is sent out, and remember, the advice message is to just simply say there's some activity in your area. But if you look where your house is, you need more than just an advice message. If you look out your window now, you will see that perhaps you should have received an emergency warning. Because of the way where the fire has started and the situation that you're in, where your house is, you won't receive that emergency message, and you will not received a watch and act message until after the fire has passed your house. So this just shows that you could be ahead of the warnings. So you do not depend on warnings for your safety. CFA have put these in place and have developed these warnings, but they don't expect people to depend solely on them to keep themselves safe. And our little animation will show that after 30 minutes, the fire has grown considerably. Thanks. So how do we know if there's a fire? If we're not going to depend on the warnings, even if we're not going to depend on our informal, we will look at our formal means of information. But how do we actually know that there is a fire? What way is another way that we can tell if there's a fire. If we're in that little house and the warnings haven't been updated, what way is there that we can tell that there's a fire on the horizon?
Thanks, Julie. It's not about staying at home, closing the curtains and putting the air conditioning on. It's certainly more about being vigilant. It's about looking out of your window, keeping a track on what's happening with your formal means of communication, your Vic Emergency app. It's about staying alert and being conscious of that environment. And I know that the residents that live in the Panmure area often are out in the environment working on the land. You know your environment better than anybody else. You know when things don't feel right and there's that uneasy sense in the air. This is that intuitive sense that a lot of you have that will give you the heads up that, hey, things aren't right and we need to make inquiries. We need to find out and take action. We need to be vigilant through our sight by keeping a look of the horizon. Is there a different color to the sky? Is there smoke in the air? Is there ash in the air, or is there embers falling around us, or bits of bark? We need to maintain a visual on activity in our area. Are there more vehicles in the area than normal? Are these emergency vehicles? We need to listen out and be vigilant of any sounds that we might be hearing that might remind us of fire-type sounds in the local woodland or limbs coming down. And of course, we need to be vigilant of the smell of smoke in the air, the smell of burning. These are our first telltale signs that we can use to find out about fire activity. Once we sense that something's not right, it's then that we can look at our Vic Emergency app or find out what the FDR or the fire danger rating is for the day. And it's then that we can make informed decisions to be out of harm's way. We've purposely told you about the fire danger rating. We've purposely told you about the elements of radiant heat and Ember Attack. We've purposely told you about the elements of the credible sources of information that you should be looking at, those formal sources of information like the Vic Emergency app. We know that it's important not to wait for the warning because you may well be ahead of the warning. All these key bits of information are designed to keep you safe and to keep you ahead of the fire game. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through a planning and decision-making phase. We're going to throw to you a situation that we've made up. It's a hypothetical situation that brings together everything that we've spoken about so far. And what this will do will allow you to form a picture in your mind about how you should be responding. It'll give you some sense of the pressure that you will be under in the event of a fire. And I'm hoping that it will spark certain elements of a change of mindset that will give you that real desire to remember to always leave early. Be out of harm's way, activate your fire plan, and leave. So, planning and decision-making. Julie will now work through a scenario with you. It'd be really great if you could close your eyes and put yourself in this space. Look out and listen out for those key words. Understand this situation and see how you respond. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Raj. So I'm going to just tell you a story, go through this, and I would like you to put yourself in this situation. Think about how you would feel and what you would do if this were you. So it is an extreme day. It's hot and windy, or it's going to be hot and windy. You've checked the fire danger rating the night before, and it is an extreme day. It's 8 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, and you look outside, you can see that it is already hot and windy. And the morning news is reporting that it is an extreme day and people should be vigilant. But you've got some stuff to do in Warrnambool. You've got an appointment to go to, and you need to check on your elderly relations in Warrnambool because you know it's a hot and windy day. So you think, well, do I need to go into town? Yes, you do. You've got that appointment. So you're going to go in early. It's 8 o'clock. You've left home by 8:15. You're on the road and you're in town. As you're driving into town, you can see that a few of those branches along the road, small branches, are being flung from the trees. And it is fairly hot. You can feel the heat coming through the glass. Remember, radiant heat comes through glass. So you do your bits and pieces, you do your things. You are a bit hot and running around, and then you decide, well, you'll grab a cup of coffee or a cold drink to take, perhaps an iced coffee, to take home. And while you're getting your coffee, you're in the coffee shop, you hear some people talking about a fire that has started in your area. So perhaps between Panmure and Fram, sort of to the north of you. You've hear about this fire. You've already downloaded the app. So you've got that on your phone. You jump on the app, you have a look to see whereabouts the fire is. And yes, sure enough, there is a fire. You can see it there. And it isn't too far from your house, from your home, but it's the little indicator of how fire, what it will impact is not there. It's not at your house yet. So you decide straight away, right, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going back home. I want to check a few things. You want to see what's going on. So you jump in the car and you head home and you're stopped by the police. There's a roadblock. The police have blocked the road and tell you that you can't go any further. Well, you wind down your window because you live just past this roadblock. So you wind down your window and you say, well, but I live there. I need to just get to my home. But they tell you that no, the road's closed. There is a burning tree across the road and you won't be able to get through. And because of the damage that's been done, you will probably have to spend a couple of nights away from your home. You won't be able to get in. What do you do now? What are your thoughts and what are you thinking? Are you prepared for this situation? What does this mean for you? Where are you going to go? So if you think about it, how would you feel if you were in this situation? You've left Panmure that morning, you thought that you were organised, you're going to be back by lunchtime, and now you can't get back. So what do you do? I might hear Raj launch another poll. And the poll will actually ask you to think about your decision making and your planning, what you need to think about and how you would think. So on a typical average Wednesday in summer, where would you be? Would you be at home, work, or on vacation on a holiday? And thinking about last summer, would you have been prepared to spend a few nights away from home in an emergency situation like this? Would you have been able to just turn around and go back to Warrnambool and stay a couple of nights away from home? And last summer, did you have an emergency kit packed with some clothes, important documents, photos, and medicines? Do you know what you would include in your emergency kit? Had you thought of that? So obviously there's no right or wrong answer. This is just what you think, how you think you would react in that situation. So I can see that there are a few people who are at work, some people are at home. Not many people were prepared to spend the night away from home, and not many people had the emergency kit. I will end the polling here and share the results. As we can see, there wasn't many people who had that emergency kit and were prepared to spend the night away from home.
Do you know, Julie, this is one reason why I love doing this particular presentation, but it gives us a really good sense of where people are at in terms of their level of preparation. And if we can get people to change their mindsets around thinking more about that preparation ahead of the fire, I call it the fire game, ahead of the fire game, that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Because in this instance, we know people were not prepared. So the learning that we can take away from this is we need to be prepared. We need to have something front and center that says to us, right, it's an extreme day. That means hot and windy. That means potential fire. That means My emergency bag. Where am I going to stay if things get rough? All of these things should suddenly start coming in your mind.
Yes, exactly.
Great
right.
learnings. Thank you.
Right, so we'll stop sharing those results and close that. And we'll go back to our day. We'll go back to the same day. Now, remember this time when you hopped on the road with your iced coffee, you're driving along and you're not stopped to play the police this time. You keep checking your Vic Emergency app. You pull over to the side of the road because you don't check your phone while you're driving. You pull over the side of the road and you can see smoke on the horizon. So you think, no, I'll check my app just to see where it is. So you check your emergency app. No, the little indicator of impact is not at your place yet. So this time you actually get home. So you get home and you think you're prepared. You've done the right thing. You've got a few things organised. So you run into your house. You know where your passport and your insurance papers are. They're in the files. You've always kept them tidy. You know that you'll need those if anything were to happen. So you run and grab them. That's okay. Back out to the car. Oh no, hang on. What about the cat? Yes. So you run back into the house and there's the cat curled up on the couch. Quite manageable. Comes with you anywhere. So you put her in a cage and into the car. Yep, that's okay. You get back in. Oh, you check your emergency app. No, that little indicator is still a bit further away from your house. You remember your camera. For once, you actually took the photos on your camera and not your phone. You haven't downloaded them. Right, back into the house to get the camera. And you're grabbing all this different stuff and you think, oh no, I need some water. I remember, and there's a bottle of water in the fridge. I better grab that too. Keep running in and out and grabbing these different things. And as you get back to the car, getting ready to go, you check the app again and you find that there's the little indicator has actually grown a bit. So it's getting bigger and it's getting very much closer to your place. You think you've got some time, and then you see the embers starting to fall. So they're falling on top of your roof, they're falling on the ground, and they've fallen in that pile of leaves that you've been meaning to clean up for the last few weeks. So what do you do now? How do you actually feel now that you're in this situation? Are you going to be able to get out? Have you got time now to hop in your car? Do you go back into the house? What do you do and how do you feel? So now I would like to ask you, in this situation, what would you have done differently? What do you think you could have done differently to not be in this situation in the first place? And I'm not going to launch a poll this time. I'm going to open the chat function and I would like you to give me some ideas of what you might have done differently in a situation like this to not be there. Some interesting answers coming through, Raj.
Yeah, just not be there is one of them, I guess. Yes, one of our people is saying that. Don't be there. Or even have the emergency bag ready.
Yeah,
Why run around so frantically last minute?
Yeah, just grab it at the door. Have it there at the door and grab it. Yes, that was a good point.
Brilliant. And, I think while people are offering some of those comments, I might just say it's really important to know that this is a very much a pretend situation. That there's lots of other extensions of this pretend idea that we could have had. And some of the thoughts that are going through my mind at this point is, well, here you are. You've got these embers falling around you. Your mind is racing because you don't know what to do. Do you pick up that hose and start putting these small ember fires out? Is that going to be enough? Have you got enough water? What about if you were to leave the house and drive down the drive? Who's to say there's not a block at the end of the road? There's not a limb that's stopping you getting out of your drive or out of your road. If you do get out of your road, which way do you go? Do you turn left or do you turn right? How do you know which way is safe? You then think about the family and the children. Where are the children? Weren't they supposed to be at school today, or was it Charlie's football practice? Oh, where's your husband? He was going to be working away today. Did he leave on time? Is he on his way back? Who's looking after the elderly parent that you normally look after who lives 2 doors down? What's happening to Florence and her 3 dogs, and she's confined to a wheelchair? What about the horses? It might seem that both Julie and I are bombarding you with a number of questions, a number of responses that we want from you. This is what it's actually like. This is the real life situation of being caught in the fire. How prepared are you? And the interesting thing here is that this is just a pretend hypothetical situation. It's not even the real deal. But can you see the amount of pressure that you're putting yourself under just dealing with this pretend situation? Do we ever want to be in this situation where we're having to run around frantically, trying to outthink the fire that's rapidly approaching us? We shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be subjecting ourselves to this degree of discomfort. We're risking our life and the lives of others being in this very vulnerable position, directly in the line of fire. We don't want to be in this line of fire. Some of the key pointers that I'd like to make here is have that plan. Plan early. Sit down with family members around the table, work out a plan. It might even involve your local CFA or even perhaps community members or neighbours. You're all in this together. And that's what I like about townships like Panmure, that community connection. Download that all-important Vic Emergency app. Make sure that you know how it works and make sure everyone else has got it as well. Prepare your property. Make sure that you understand what property preparation is about. And again, the resources, the Property Advice Visit Service leaflet is succinct and clear and will give you good guidance on how to put some of those preparation plans into place. Of course, we can offer a bushfire planning workshop to the Panmure community, and we can arrange that through your CFA captain, Craig. Be prepared. That's the number one thing. Don't get caught out. Stay ahead of the game. Now, up until now, we've spoken about lots of different factors in this preparation plan. I'd like to make a bit of consideration about COVID-19. Yes, you can still leave early. You may well leave a high-risk fire area on a day of high fire danger. If it's such that you are in isolation mode or self-isolating, make sure that wherever you're next going to, people around you are aware that you are self-isolating and maintain your COVID-safe plan. And yes, you may well travel for the purpose of preparing your property for the fire season. I would also like to say, please keep good connection with the Department of Health and Human Services website to monitor the latest on COVID-19. It's a changing space. Monitor it carefully and abide by the regulations. Something that I said at the beginning of our presentation, and we're coming towards the end now. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being so honest with the chat and also the polling functions. Survival. Survival is the name of the game here. When we talk about risk mitigation, it's all about survival. But even the best survival plans or the best made plans can fail. So what are your options in this instance? Yes, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, as many plans as you can get to be in place. One of the main things is to cover your skin from head to toe. Do not have any exposed skin at all. We have spoken already about the danger that is radiant heat. These items of clothing should be key components of your emergency bag. Natural fiber clothing. If you don't have the opportunity to have them on in the event of being caught out in a fire, make sure you make opportunity to put them on as soon as possible. We know that radiant heat is the biggest killer when it comes to fires. When we're looking at protection from radiant heat, we know that radiant heat will travel in straight lines, but it can't bend around corners, so protection may be afforded behind or inside solid objects. Remember also that radiant heat will travel directly through glass, so do not stand or hide or crouch behind any glass windows. that may explode and come crashing down. Take great care. Radiant heat is the precursor to fire. It travels ahead of the fire front and can cause fatality. If it's such that we do get caught out in a fire situation with an advancing fire front, ember attack, and obvious radiant heat, it is possible to seek refuge in a large body of water, be it a river, a dam, or a swimming pool. These will afford some level of protection from the advancing fire. I think we need to make consideration of stationary vehicles when it comes to seeking some kind of refuge from an advancing fire. Cars, vehicles are designed to get you from A to B. They are not designed as places of refuge in the event of a fire. In fact, I can't imagine a more uncomfortable space than a car or a vehicle of some kind. However, we understand that in the event of an emergency, it may be your only option, in which case Julie is about to give you a few pointers when it comes to being caught out in a vehicle amongst a fire. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Raj. And as Raj said, it is a last option. There is no way we would like you to be caught in a car in a fire, and you should not drive through fire. If you are stuck, if you found that you're in front or behind the fire, then stop your car. Park on the side of the road. Get off the road if you can, but in an area of less fuel, away from trees and long grass. May have to be a burnt area so that you've got some protection from that fire that is there. If you are in the car, get down low, get away from the windows and that radiant heat. Have the woolen blanket. By now, I hope you've got you're covered up in all your clothes. Get down low, cover the blanket over you, drink the water for hydration. Mitigate some of those effects of radiant heat on your body. And monitor the situation. Peek out, find out where the fire is. And as soon as the fire is passed, it will only be seconds. It will not take long for a fire to go over your car or around your car. Hop out of the car and stay on burnt ground. Stay on ground that has less fuel. The reason you don't park on the road, even though the road does have less fuel, is because you don't want to cause an accident. You don't want another car to come along and hit you. You don't want to block the road for emergency vehicles to get through. Keep your lights on so people know where you are and monitor the situation. But as we've said all along, the best place would be is not to be there. Don't get caught in a fire, or especially in a car in a fire. So back to you, Raj.
Thanks, Julie. I need to make particular reference to what we call the neighbourhood safer place. Bushfire neighbourhood safer place, or a place of last resort, is just that. It's designed to be a place of last resort. These places are critically reviewed to make sure that they offer you an element of protection from radiant heat. They are designed not for comfort, but for purpose only. You don't want to be in a situation where you are looking for a place of last resort. If you find yourself in this very difficult position when you have left it late, and this is the only option, the places of last resort are denoted by a green sign. They are called the Bushfire Neighbourhood Safer Place, place of last resort, and the emoji of 4 family members or 4 persons. The nearest one to Panmure, the nearest bushfire place of last resort for Panmure is actually the Panmure Public Halls, within about 500 meters of the Panmure shop, milk bar. If this is not an option, there are a further 8 bushfire places of last resort in Warrnambool, located some 22 kilometres away. That in itself causes a problem. The road to Warrnambool may well be a hazardous, fire-ridden road, and you would be travelling through fire. Something that, as Julie has said, is something that we do not advocate for. You drive away from fire, not into fire. Another bushfire place of last resort located in the locality is Nurak, and that's the Nurak Recreation Reserve, which again is some distance away from Panmure. The number one message here is that you do not want to be having to look for a place of last resort, because this will not be an option for you. You will have already have left this fire danger area. You'll have heeded the signs of the fire danger rating. You looked at your Vic Emergency app, and you will have long gone with your family, your friends, and your possessions and your animals, and you will have been out of harm's way. That is the core message of today's presentation. Mitigating or eliminating the risk as much as possible so that you are out of harm's way. Fire is a force of nature that is uncontrollable, unpredictable, and extremely damaging to communities, to lives, to properties. The following slide gives you an indication of what we mean when we talk about fire in its many forms. The intensity of ember attack, the plumage of smoke on the horizon, advancing fast-moving grass fires, and of course, canopy fires. Fire leaves an immense scar on the landscape, and it also takes an immense number of lives every year. It is important, once again, for me to reiterate the need to stay safe. This is a guide to some of the resources that are available through the CFA website, Your Guide to Survival, a very succinct, small, easy read guide that can give you some life-saving information. Your Guide to Property Preparation, as we've spoken about, the Property Advice Visit Service, PAVS. And of course, the CFA are happy to organise a bushfire planning workshop, and I'm happy to chat to Craig about that in the future. Once again, the importance of the Vic Emergency app and having it available on your smartphone. As we spoke about earlier, the close connection between community and the CFA. Your local community CFA captain, Craig, and his team are more than happy to assist you in your fire planning, explain to you the capacity of the brigade and how it all works, if there's any further questions. And of course, I'm available for any further questions that you might have regarding fire safety essentials. It may be that you want to organise a bushfire planning workshop, perhaps. We're here to help you. Before we sign off, I would like to ask Julie to launch our final poll, please.
Thanks, Raj. Yes, this final poll is really for our benefit. There's no wrong or right answer. It's your opinion. We would just like you to let us know, did this meeting give you a better understanding of bushfire risk in your bush or grass fire risk in your area? Yes, no, or confirmed what I knew already. And would you recommend this program to family, friends or neighbours who live in a fire-prone area? Just a yes or no there. So if you could just fill that in, as I said, it's for our benefit. And excellent, Raj. That's very good feedback that we've got there. And it does help us develop these programs when you give your opinion like that. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. And thank you very much from myself also. I think it's great that you've been able to give up part of your Friday evening. I know it's not the best. It's a big ask for a lot of community members to do this. But thanks for being with us for the last 1 hour and 30 minutes of this Friday night, listening to fire safety essentials. Now, both Julie and I have given you a lot of information, but there's still a lot more information out there. This program is designed to give you the basics, but there is more to fire than just the basics, but this is a start. I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to express some of these things to you. We want you to stay safe during the fire period. We want you to stay connected as a community and look out for each other. On behalf of Julie and myself, thank you, and we wish you well.
Thank you and good night. Thank you.